who is a Latina version of Han Solo. Hello mortals, I am the Booktube Goddess, the #1 drag queen booktuber on YouTube. I wanted to do my top 5 books that were published in 2019. Now, I did not read that many books published in 2019. I read a lot of backlist books, as some of you may know if you watch my videos. But with my Shelf It or Shove It game, where I pick new release books based on their cover, I did read a fair amount of new releases. And a lot of these were in my October wrap-up. Number 5, I want to shout out the debut novel by Valerie Valdez, The Chilling Effect, which, yes, was a Shelf It or Shove It pick. The cover is really cute, but it's not really a funny book. Not if you're looking for a Douglas Adams or Terry Pratchett type of comedy, but it did have some silly scenes that were humorous. But it's not really a book I would call a really funny book. In fact, I thought it read more like a detective or mystery novel. The main character is Eva Inocente, captain of the spaceship La Sirena Negra, who is a Latina version of Han Solo. Eva is being blackmailed by a sinister organization to use her ship for sketchy jobs, and there's a big mystery of how these jobs relate to some nefarious scheme. Anyway, even though I thought there were some problems with the pacing and the structure, I think this was a very strong debut novel, and it got my blessing. Number 4, I want to shout out The Institute by Stephen King. I love this novel. It brought me back to the early Stephen King novels about kids with psychic powers. It's about a boy named Luke who had, you guessed it, psychic powers, and who also has a super genius level IQ. Men in Black kidnap Luke and take him to the Institute with other kidnapped psychic kids. Can Luke figure out the mystery of who runs this agency, and can he escape before it's too late? Again, to me, this harkened back to Stephen King's earlier novels, and I found it a refreshing, fun read, and I think you might too. The Institute, of course, got my blessing. Coming in at number 3 is The Monster of Elendhaven by Jennifer Giesbrecht. I had never heard of this author, but I picked it for Shelf It or Shove It. And this is an anti-hero novel, which is not for everyone, but is where the main character, or in this case, the main characters, are not meant to be liked. It's a horror novel in a fantasy setting. Johann and Florian are 2 disturbing dark characters. Johann is a killer with a Frankenstein monster type of background, and Florian is a mysterious sorcerer with a past. The setting is inspired of early industrial Germany. Again, these are not likable characters, and the plot in the story is really dark, so it's not for everyone, but I loved it. I gave this novel my blessing. Number 2 is a book that I haven't really talked about yet because I just read it, but it is Queen of the Conquered by Kaysen Callender. Now, I plan to talk a lot more about this book in my December wrap-up, but for now, let's just say this book surprised me a lot. In this novel, the author made some really interesting choices in the character arc of the main character, Sigourney Rose. Now, as you read the novel, you keep asking yourself, is this really an anti-hero novel? Or is this character in the midst of some redemption arc, and you really don't know until the very end? And even then, you question about what this character arc was all about. It's written in the first person present tense, which, if you're like me, it takes a little bit of reading, maybe a chapter or 2 to get used to, but it also has elements of omniscient third person. And let me explain that real quick. In this world, some people are born with psychic powers, which is called the craft, and Sigourney has a craft which lets her read minds. So in this first-person account, you are often dipping into the perspective and minds of other characters. Now, the writing is fantastic, but even so, I was unsure about this book until the very end. The story is set in a fantasy world inspired by the Dutch slave colonies in the Caribbean islands. If own voices are important to you, the author, Casey Callender, is a person of color who grew up in the Caribbean islands, at least according to the bio. Sigourney Rose is a black woman who is one of the slave owners. Yes, a black slave owner of black slaves. Now, all the other slave owners are white, and she faces their contempt. And of course, the slave she owns dislikes her because she owns them. Sigourney's family was slaughtered when she was a little girl, and she grew up and was educated in the North, then came back to the islands to get revenge against those who killed her family. But to do so, she has to become a slave owner herself, and her plan is to rise up through the ranks and take control of the islands. But in order to do that, she has to become as heartless as all the other slave owners. For me, I flipped back and forth between actively disliking her and being warily sympathetic to her. So you need to trust the author on this one to carry you through to a really fantastic conclusion. Now, like I've said before, anti-hero books are not for everyone because you are meant not to like this character. The only other review on this book was from Books and Bow Ties, who had a big problem with this main character, and I don't blame them.
I don't like her character. She spends so much time whining. I also don't think that she's a very intelligent character, which makes it hard for me to relate to her at all because the decisions that she makes are so wildly unwise.
But this book got my blessing, and I hope you'll give it a chance. Now, the #1 2019 new release that I read is Middle Game by Shannon McGuire. Now, I read this book simply because it was so heavily recommended by Rachel Marie, who created the Book Junkie Trials Readathon.
Middle Game, that is Middle Game is Middle Game.
This novel fits into multiple genres: fantasy, science fiction, horror. It's the story of a pair of twins, a boy and a girl created through alchemy, like some Frankenstein ritual. And then they're separated at birth. The boy is talented at languages and the girl is gifted in math. The story centers around how they find each other, what the relationship means, how they need each other to complete themselves, how that attracts them at times and repels them at times. Their relationship is strictly platonic, thank God, but it is a deep spiritual connection. Their maker is a mysterious man named Mr. Reed, who himself was a creature that was created by the late, great Asphodel Baker, an even more mysterious alchemist and children's book author. Why did Reed create them? Why doesn't he want them to meet? The mysteries and stories get deeper and deeper and darker the more you get into the novel. The pacing is fantastic. I found myself drawn more and more into the story the more I read, until I reached the point of no return, where I found it hard to put the novel down. I now get it. I now get why people love this book. It's a solid, great novel. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, and it certainly gets my blessing. I'll have affiliate links to all these books mentioned below. And until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.